talking to yourself as if there were more than one of you. And I was thinking about this. And I was like, gosh, we really do that. Like we do that with pretty much everything. And then I thought about all the times I do things and I don't want to do them and I'm forcing myself. How many times have you said that, right? Like, I'm going to force myself to do this. And nobody likes to be forced to do anything. I thought about this. I'm like, holy shit, man. We create this fictional dictator of ourselves within our own minds to get us to do things. So it's like we create this other person that forces us to do the shit that we don't want to do.
This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey, before I get in this episode with Sal Di Stefano, I just wanted to read a review that I recently got from Denise DeMaio. And she says, this was a really great episode. It's good to hear about where people are going. I also loved the vulnerability in the beginning. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to write that review. I know it takes time out of your day, and it takes not only time, but time that you'll never get back. So I really appreciate that. I just wanted to say, before we get into this interview with Sal, if you're looking for an opportunity to start your own podcast and get a website and start archiving all the amazing information that you have in your head and actually put it out in the world, because you do have a small business and you want to start being known in that area, or you just want to start hanging out with really cool people that you look up to. Well, the whole ask them for a cup of coffee and sit them down thing just doesn't work anymore. But when you have a podcast, almost anybody, as long as you reach out to them in the right kind of way, with vulnerability, with honesty, with truth. I mean, it may sound easy, but it's not always easy. So if you're struggling with this at all, please reach out to me, Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com, and I will get you started with a podcast if you meet those certain requirements. I'm only helping a certain amount of people, but I would love to help you with the podcast and also get you a website started as well. And this is a done-for-you service, so you get to just do the fun part, which is actually conducting the interviews and lining up the guests that you'd like to have on your show. So let me know if this at all resonates with you, and I'd love to help. But just don't ever forget that you're enough, and hit that subscribe button to be indicated that every single time a Scratch Your Own Itch episode is released. Without further ado, enjoy my interview with Sal Di Stefano. Hey, you. Yeah, just you. So, my curiosity question is, what's the difference between knowing something and understanding something, but actually implementing that understanding into practice? Okay, so let me set the tone. The story you tell yourself right now about getting in great shape is critical. Here's the truth. You might believe and tell yourself that you hate working out because when you get sore, it doesn't feel very good. So you make this story inside of your head that the only way to get in great shape is through soreness, right? Not so much. For most of us, we've been told the story that the only way to get in really great shape is by hammering the body. And if you aren't sore, then the workout wasn't working. So you started telling yourself that story, and that the only way to change yourself was by challenging yourself, which is true, but it doesn't mean you need to be super sore. I've been fortunate enough to discover how to get in really great shape because of the thanks to Sal Di Stefano, Adam Schaefer, Doug Edge, Justin Andrews, and the Mind Pump crew, who have changed so many people's lives time and time again and revealed the stories about their clients and the personal experiences that muscle adaptation performance systems and how to really get results by utilizing brilliant programming. Sure. Now, the new curiosity question for you is, how can I do as little as possible, but still elicit change? Comes down to beliefs. I know it did for me. So you may be wondering who Sal Di Stefano is. To me, he's a true genius when it comes to anything health, wealth, or wisdom related. And he's been a mentor of mine without realizing it for the last 3 years. But he's also been an absolute incredible father through the stories I listened to on Mind Pump. But I want to stop doing all the talking and actually get the guy in here in a bit, because I want you to listen closely in this conversation we're about to have about the beliefs that you have in your own health and fitness and how to actually start living the truth. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the one and only Sal Di Stefano. How you doing, Sal, man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Dude.
Great intro.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really psyched up and excited for you to be on Scratch Your Own Itch.
Very cool. How many?
Dude,
what episode is this? How long have you been on the air now?
I've done over 100 interviews because I've been batch recording, but this will be like you'll be episode 70, so I'm gonna do 69, and unless you want to be episode 69, man, I'll get you in right away.
Hey, I'm whatever works for you. That's a great number. So yeah, let's do that. Put me on 69. Sal Di Stefano, episode 69.
You got it. Yeah, I want to first off start because I know that you're a lifetime learner and you're a very curious guy. And to me, scratching your own itch is done by solving your own life problems and helping others do it at the same time. So what are you most curious about lately? And how are you solving your own problems and helping other people solve theirs?
Well, a long time ago, I learned to something that was actually taught to me by somebody that I trained, and that is to make friends with the unknown, or make friends with what you don't know. And that sounds kind of weird, right? Like, what do you mean? How can you make friends with something you don't know? What that means is that when you learn new information, be okay with it shattering your current understanding of things, or at least that, or if not, even more so, be okay with being totally wrong. And that's what, making friends with the unknown is all about. And that encourages curiosity, and it also encourages self-growth. So for me, at the moment, I'm very into just the psychology of people. And I say that at the moment as if I haven't been into that for a long time. It's kind of what I've always been into. And it's brought me into a lot of different paths, everything from economics and politics. But this, for the longest period of time, it's been about fitness. And I learned a long time ago as a personal trainer, that if I wanted to be very successful as a trainer, or at least get my clients to be successful, I had to understand the psychology behind fitness and why people do what they do, why they don't do what they know they're supposed to do, and how to apply that so that people can become successful with their health and fitness goals. And that was a long journey. It took a long time to really learn what that looked like, because, and it was fascinating too, right? Because if you ask the average person who wants to lose 50 pounds or get in better shape, they kind of know what they need to do, and they know they need to lose weight, and they know that their health isn't ideal. So it's not usually necessarily an information problem. Sure, the information they have may be not the most accurate, but they know they need to move, and they know they need to at least pay attention to what they're eating. And people still don't do that. And it always fascinated me. I always thought to myself, like, why? Like, why do people go to the doctor and then get warned that they're going to get a heart attack? Or why do they have a health issue? Or why do they let themselves, be 60 pounds overweight? At some point, that person was 30 pounds overweight. Like, how does that happen? And, through training clients, I was able to figure out a few things. And the funny thing is, you could take what I've learned through training clients, through fitness, and it kind of applies to everyday life. One of them is that we tend to treat exercise and nutrition as punishments rather than as things that we do because we want to take care of ourselves. In the intro, you talked about how people work out and they try and get real sore, and they judge a workout by the soreness that they get or the intensity of the workout. Part of that is because we're told that you need to work out really hard, otherwise your body's not going to change. And the other part of it is people view exercise as a painful punishment. I'm fat, therefore I need to kick my own butt in the gym, or I ate that cake yesterday or whatever, so I need to really sweat it off. How many times have you heard people say that, right? I need to sweat it out. And, treating fitness and nutrition like a punishment can be successful in a very short term, but in the long term, it's terribly unsuccessful. And so, what am I most interested in? People. Ultimately, I love learning about people. I love learning about what makes people tick. Through the process, I learn about myself, and the more layers I peel back, the more I find. I don't think I'll ever stop being blown away by what I learn about, human behavior, in relationship to any subject, let alone fitness. And that's pretty much it. It makes what I do so much fun, right? Because I love people so much, I can pretty much do anything, but when you apply fitness to that, it's like I combine my two favorite hobbies or passions together, and it's been awesome.
Wow. So much to unpack there. Really, that's why I started loving the way you guys formatted your programs, MAPS, which we'll totally talk about. If anybody hasn't tried any of those MAPS programs, they're missing out, because it's a great way to find out what works for you, and also a great way to learn that, like, to get in really great shape is not to hammer your body. It's not to make yourself sore. And so many people believe that, German volume training and hitting it harder and harder, and it's just not sustainable. And I think you touched on something that I really, the same reason why I even started this podcast was, the understanding of really, like, why people can know information, especially in health and wellness, and not actually implement it. And so, it kind of leads me to my next question, which is what do you think is really the thing? Do you think it's small mini steps that make someone really change? Do you think it's a big pain in someone's life that makes someone change? Or do you think it's, extreme gratification that they, endure or experience that all of a sudden makes them change for the better?
Oh, wow. Probably all three of them. If you want to make a big change, there's a few approaches. Now, rarely will you have that kind of earth-shattering, life-changing moment, right, where something happens and then it finally clicks and then everything changes. Now, that does happen, but that's quite rare in real life. More often than not, it's the small changes that add up to the big change. Now, if you think about it in terms of, when I tell people, make little changes and that's what's going to give you the results you're looking for, a lot of times people have a tough time understanding that, because they think, well, God, if I make a couple small changes, how big of an impact can that have? Well, if you have let's say we have two parallel lines that run perfectly parallel, and I take the top line and I adjust it like a fraction of a degree in another direction. If I follow those two lines for, a few inches, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. But if you follow those things for miles and miles and miles, the further out they go, the further the distance is between those lines. So the small changes do send your life in a trajectory that over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years become major differences. So I like to communicate that to people and let them know, like, listen, what we're talking about here when we talk about your fitness is we're talking about making dramatic changes in your life, and they don't start with today, or in other words, you can't make all those changes all at once. It just doesn't work that way. It's way too different, way too uncomfortable. We have to start small. That's just the most effective way to do it. So, I think, when it comes to, for fitness, for example, you want to challenge yourself enough so that what you're doing has meaning and purpose. Because if something's too easy, it doesn't have any meaning, right? But you don't want to make it so difficult that you fail consistently and constantly, because that'll discourage you. So there's kind of that sweet spot of challenging enough to where I get meaning. You know how have you ever done something that was just hard enough to where you barely got through it, but at the end of it's so satisfying because it was the challenge that made it, gave it all that meaning. So find something that you can change, that's going to challenge you just that much, but not so much to where you're going to fail. It needs to be realistic. And once you can master that change and it becomes a part of your life, then you can add a little bit more to that. And if you just follow that process right there, which looks different for everybody, that's the important thing to understand here, is that for one person, that may mean eating, a serving of vegetables every day. And for another person, that may mean taking the stairs instead of the elevator. And for someone else, that may mean eliminating sugar. It's got to be something that's realistic for yourself, but challenging enough that it actually gives you some sense of meaning and some sense of purpose. And if you apply that on a daily basis, you'll find that within a relatively short period of time, we're talking about a year, you'll have made dramatic changes to your life. And the result of that being in terms of fitness, the body that you've always wanted. And that's really the only way, I think, to be successful. Those life-changing moments come few and far between, and many people never experience those types of moments. So waiting for something like that to happen or trying to recreate that, very, very difficult approach, and it usually doesn't work. And, you talk about, you were mentioning about exercise earlier and how you don't need to beat your body up. You same thing with the body. You need to send enough of a stimulus to get your body to change, but not too much to where you overcome your body's ability to adapt and recover. I like to use other systems of adaptation in the body to illustrate this. So if I were to tell somebody, if you were to tell somebody, to go outside and get a tan, you wouldn't tell them get sunburn as many days in a row as you possibly can. That's how you're going to get a tan. Of course, that's not going to work. Like if you go outside and try and get your skin to adapt to the sun by getting a sunburn every single day, you will very quickly overcome your body with damage, and you'll find that not only will you not get a suntan, but you'll probably hurt yourself. Same thing is true with exercise. When you go into the gym and you want to work out, you want to train your body with just enough challenge to get it to change, but not too much to where it overcomes your body's ability to adapt and recover. And for most people, that doesn't look like the crazy, super intense, ridiculous workouts that you see advertised for people when it comes to weight loss. It's just not like that for most people. You talked about German volume training. Yeah, that works great if you have incredible recovery ability and you're extremely fit, like somebody with lots and lots of experience. Then you can apply something like that and it might work for you. But for most people, not only will it not work, but it'll set you back. So, approach these big changes with these small changes and watch what happens. And what's the saying, right? Like, to climb a mountain, you just got to go follow one step after another. Very similar. It's the same, philosophy with pretty much any goal that you have.
Yeah, I so agree with so many things. I love the parallel lines analogy that you said. It's so minute to think about it in that way. Like, if you take a day off and actually rest, and you think that inside your head, that day off is going to ruin your entire fitness career just by taking the day off, when really that day of rest might actually help you in the long run. And it's just such a small variable, but we're flawed humans, and that's why I think having your podcast, for example, Mind Pump, has been like my coach, because it's been that thing in my ear that's told me, okay, it's okay to do XYZ. It's okay to take a day rest. It's okay to give yourself the permission to actually have this, this food that is demonized, like sugar, like, some pie with family. It's okay to have that food if the overall goal now is to just connect with people and level out with them and hang out with them. And it's not going to ruin your entire progress as far as a person that looks to get in better shape. If they just have one piece of pie, they're not going to hurt themselves. But what I want to do is really switch kind of a little bit of gears. Like, one of the things that I realized with Mind Pump is you guys are really transparent. Like, you guys are so out there with just, the truth of branched chain amino acids and supplements and what have you, and even your own life. Like, just some of the things you've said. I kind of want to dig into like a little bit of Sal's weirdness. And what do you think's like one of the weirdest things that you do nowadays that not a lot of people know about, just to make someone feel less alone?
Geez, that's a good question. I don't know. What do I do? I do a lot of things that are weird. I go down rabbit holes quite a bit when I'm reading. So if I read an article on some topic, then something within that article will interest me. And so I will read about that thing, and then that will send me down a rabbit hole. And this can last for hours. I can get quite manic sometimes with the information that I'll consume, and other times I feel like I just want to sit there and do nothing. I'm kind of like a light switch. Like, I'm either full blast or I'm off, completely off. So I don't know if that makes me weird. I know it annoys the shit out of me because I wish I was always on, and sometimes I'm not, and I can't figure out how to maneuver that switch or how to work it so I can always be on, or maybe I have to be off sometimes. Otherwise I'll fatigue myself. I also, let me think, what else? I don't like swimming in really deep open water. Kind of weird. I feel like there's going to be a shark or something that's going to bite me.
Dun, dun.
And all joking aside. Yeah, exactly. I just don't, I'm not a big, I don't like doing it too much, which probably means I should do more of it. And that's something I've been trying to do lately, is like the things I hate doing, I'm going to kind of make myself do a little bit and then see, what's going on. And
dude, snorkeling, every time I do that, snorkeling is so much fun. You got to go snorkeling. You'd love it.
Yeah. I've done it before, and it's like, I got to have my life jacket on and like float. So, but I think I'll try the real snorkeling. Yeah, I know. It's pretty funny. I gotta try real snorkeling, excuse me. And see what happens. It's funny too because I say things like I got to make myself do that. And you mentioned something earlier where you said give yourself permission. Something that I do that's kind of weird is I sometimes will sit and just think. And every once in a while when I do that, I'll come up with a way of communicating something differently that will resonate with me very strongly and make something kind of make sense. So I did this recently. I was reading a book, and in the book they talk about how we tend to create versions of ourselves, and then we have conversations with these other selves of ours. So like thinking and stuff like that. It's like you're talking to yourself as if there were more than one of you. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, gosh, we really do that. Like, we do that with pretty much everything. And then I thought about all the times I do things and I don't want to do them, and I'm forcing myself. How many times have you said that, right? Like, I'm going to force myself to do this. And nobody likes to be forced to do anything. I thought about this. I'm like, holy shit, man. We create this fictional dictator of ourselves within our own minds to get us to do things. So it's like we create this other person that forces us to do the shit that we don't want to do. And then we need to ask them permission to not do those things. What if I could just eliminate that? What if I could eliminate that person, or realize that I created that dictator because I actually wanted to get something done, which in reality means I want to do that thing and I don't need somebody to force me, especially not some fictional dictator that I invented in my own mind. And it was like, whoosh, light bulb went off. And, now whenever I find myself doing something that I don't want to do, and I think to myself, like, I have to do this. And I think to myself, like, Who's forcing me? Oh, I'm forcing me. Wait a minute. That means I actually want to do it. Oh, cool. I want to do this thing. And then I don't hate it anymore. All of a sudden I start enjoying what I'm doing. And I've applied that to fitness. Now I've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, and I've talked to a few clients about this concept, and it seems to resonate really well with people. Yeah, especially when they say things like, I don't, I can't eat that. And I'll say, well, why can't you? Who's forcing you? That's you. You're forcing yourself. Who is it? That's that dictator. Get rid of that dictator. And it's helped a lot of people, but it's pretty fascinating stuff. So I think a lot about weird shit like that randomly. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll write something down or tell my girlfriend I just thought of something weird. I'm trying to think what else I do. I do a lot of stuff that's weird. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head though. Yeah, I bet if you asked Adam and Justin, they probably would rattle off about 50 different things that I do. That's kind of weird. I have a terrible sense of direction. Like absolutely. I don't know if it's weird. It's not weird necessarily. Maybe it is weird. It's exceptionally bad. Like if I walk into a building, a large building, and I take a couple turns, I will completely disorient myself to what direction or what door I came into or where I am, like completely. I actually had a client once that was, she was a specialist on dyslexia, and she told me that I have a dyslexic brain when it comes to direction, which I didn't know could even exist. So I guess that's my excuse, but I get lost going everywhere. Navigation is the, best invention of all time as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, so I guess your favorite maps program is really Google Maps, huh?
Boom. That was pretty good.
Boom. Anyways, dude, so I want to really touch base on that thinking about thinking, like the two consciousness. I recently wrote my first draft of a book, which was just that because of about 5 months ago, I tried to commit suicide because of some people can call it a demon, whatever label you want to put it. But there was another thought that was going into my head that actually made me believe that I was that person. So like, for example, I always give this example to someone. I say, try to take 10 seconds in the shower to just not think about anything while you're in the shower. And it's almost impossible to not think. And that's a good thing because that means you're probably dead. But what also it means is that you're thinking about thinking, which means there's communications between those two consciousness, which you kind of just talked about just now, is like, why do we, tell ourselves we can't do something? And it comes down to the story that we tell ourselves. So like, I often try to do this with myself. I go, I believe I'm boring. I'm not funny right now. I'm doing a terrible job with this podcast interview or something like that. And then I go, instead of saying that, how about I say, I'm feeling like I'm boring. I feel like I'm not funny. I feel like I'm doing a terrible job at this interview. Like that for me gives me the extreme permission to just relax and go like, just because I'm feeling it doesn't mean it's true. And just because I'm having the thought doesn't mean that it's true as well.
Absolutely.
And so it's like,
yeah. If you don't mind me interrupting, it's,
I don't. Absolutely.
Have you read any books by Eckhart Tolle?
Dude, yeah, he's wild, dude. But I can't stand his voice, but I love his work.
Yeah, he's very, he talks very slow and monotone, but his books are phenomenal. And he talks about how he was, extremely depressed. And he was sitting there one day and he thought to himself, like, I can't stand myself. And he thought to himself, like, wait, I can't stand myself. Like, who is this other person? And he realized in that moment that he was the observer. He was not his thoughts. He was not his body. He was not, any of these things. He was the observer behind all of that. I think that's a little bit about what you're talking about. Instead of saying, I am boring, you could say, I feel like I'm being boring. Or somebody, for example, who may be overweight, instead of saying, I am fat, they could say, I have fat. Realizing that you're the essence behind all these things, or you're the observer of all these things, makes a big difference when you're in a either stressful situation or even to not attach yourself to really, really good situations. I think that's another problem. People will have good things happen and they'll attach and identify so strongly with them that they set themselves up for a really hard fall, later on when things, change as they typically do.
100%. Yeah. Oh my God. So true. And I believe that's where it comes down to, is being able to accept that there's always going to be that tension and that fight inside of you that goes, okay, I can be so much more right now. Like you were saying earlier with the whole turning it on and turning it off. I'm the same exact way. When I turn it off, I feel literally like I rather, honestly, like no joke, I'd rather just be dead when I'm tired. And so I made up this personal philosophy for myself to tell myself, if I'm not compassionate in this moment, if I'm not creative, I'm not curious in this moment, if I'm not doing one of those three things, that probably means that I'm just going to be tired. So do you think have you ever tried to make up your own personal philosophy? And what is that, if you have?
Yeah, I don't, relatively recently, it's been more because I've always tried to follow, and I haven't been always successful, okay? But I've always tried to follow a doctrine of integrity, or try to be as honest as possible. And I haven't always followed it, right? I've definitely had dark moments in my life when I was somebody else, if you will, or if I wasn't being true to myself, or I didn't, display incredible integrity to the people around me. But that has always been something that I valued, and I always found myself in those situations very conflicted. And it's, when you're conflicted with what your true values are, that can be a personal hell. It can be very difficult. And so that's always been a theme. And more recently, it's been more like just trying to be better than I was yesterday, incrementally, just a small amount. Just try to be a little bit better every single day in some way. And I know that in a short period of time, that's going to completely transform me into an incredible individual. But all I have to do is worry about that, that little bit every single day. And then the other thing too is really realizing that, and the reason why I'm comparing myself to myself yesterday is I can't compare myself to really anybody else. It's just not fair to do so. And the reason why it's not fair is I don't know nearly as much about other people as I know about myself. I don't know I know everything about me, right? I know all my thoughts. I know all the bad stuff, all the good stuff. I know all the terrible shit I've done. I know how lazy I could be. I know how great I could be. I know literally what I think every second. And so when I compare that to other people, I know basically nothing about other people. So how could I possibly compare myself to other individuals? Even if somebody seems to have, so much more than I do. Let's say I compare my body to somebody else, or I compare that somebody may have more money than me, or seems to be a better, father. I don't know their whole story. How could I possibly compare myself to somebody like that? So all I can do is compare myself to myself yesterday, and just try to improve upon that incrementally. And that feels like the best philosophy that I've come across, and I think in my life. I think if I follow that, it keeps me feeling, like I can always improve. It also prevents the downfalls of comparing myself to other people, because there's always somebody that's doing better than I am, or at least in my, because I don't have all the information, right? It looks like they're doing better than I am, and they may be doing better than me, but that's still not fair, right? So it seems to be a philosophy that, I think is going to work pretty well, and it feels right. So that's the one I'm following right now.
Wow. I think it's amazing that you say that and articulate that, because, I think one of the biggest reasons why I think anybody gets into a really deep hole is because of that extreme amount of comparison. And you guys talk about on the show all the time is because of social media. It is so hard not to compare yourself to other people, because you're seeing the exceptional all the time. You're seeing someone's resume of exception on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whatever it may have you. And it's hard to not see someone's amazing moments. And even, when I listen to your guys' podcast, I found myself thinking the exact thought of Logan, like, dude, you're never going to be like Sal or Justin or Adam. Like, you're not smart like them, or you don't have a group of friends like them. And I'm a very lonely cat. And so I do things by myself, and I work I like to work alone, but I'm just telling myself that story, even though I haven't really, dove too deep in knowing what it's like to run a company with, you know, 3 awesome dudes. And I still got to find that tribe, and I'm trying to find that. And, not that I have a question set up, but I'm going to come up with something. But what do you think? I want to really ask you this. Actually, I just thought of this is, what's your daily routine like? If you talked about just being 1% better, what's your average day like? And, you know, what do you do for a workout routine?
So in the morning, so I wake up at 5, and I'll typically go downstairs and I'll make some coffee. And while that brews or whatever, I'll check my email and do a little bit of work. And then, you know, my girlfriend comes downstairs and we'll have some coffee. And at about 5:45 or so, we start our workout. I have a home gym, so I have a garage with a very basic squat rack, barbell, dumbbells, and some kettlebells. And I do, you know, typically a full body routine. Depending on the day, it'll be intense or it'll be less intense, but I do train quite frequently. It's just the most effective way to train, to really send that frequent signal to your body versus the super intense all the time, you know, super intense type workouts. They sometimes are intense, sometimes less intense, but I do something on most days. So we do that workout and we finish that usually at about 6:45 or so. Then I'll go upstairs, wake up my kids. And as they're getting ready, I'll come downstairs. I'll make them breakfast and get their lunches ready. And, while they're eating that, I'll check work a little bit, take a shower, take them to school. And then I come here to Mind Pump. And typically we start the day off with a podcast or some YouTube content. And depending on if we have a guest or not, we'll do an interview. And then we work on the business. And then usually by about 3 p.m., I'm done with working here at the facility. Although I don't stop working, I'm usually working on, you know, with social media or in our private forum. Then I'll go pick up my kids from school and we'll have, they'll come home, do the homework. We'll have dinner. We'll have some reading time. Sometimes we'll play some board games. I like to do things, with my kids. It gives me opportunities to hear about their day and talk to them and just kind of observe how they're doing. Cause a lot of times kids will say one thing, but you can tell another thing, you know, like if you really pay attention to your kids, you know, if you ask your kid, you know, how was today? Oh, it was fine. And you can, you know, if you hang out with them, you can tell like something was going on. And many times if you just hang out with them enough, they'll start to talk about things. So I try to create those opportunities and then I put them to bed. My daughter usually goes to bed at 8:30. My son will go to bed at 9:30 and then I usually follow 30 minutes after that. And that's a typical average day. Now weekends are a little different. Weekends, if I don't have my kids with me, I like to go hiking or go to museums. Me and my girlfriend enjoy doing that quite a bit. And if I have my kids, we'll maybe do a couple of those things with them, or we'll just go to a different city and have some interesting food together. But my day's pretty routine. I just try to find and enjoy the small things throughout the day and try to find opportunities to take a second and reflect and think about, you know, what I'm doing in that moment, you know, being mindful. That's a great practice to do. And you can do that in any second, throughout the day where you kind of take a pause and, you know, take a couple breaths and be where you're at that moment. And then you achieve a little bit of a peace with that and then you move on. But yeah, nothing too spectacular unless we're traveling here, with Mind Pump, in which case the days look crazy and they can be pretty much anything. But if I'm here, pretty regimented.
Oh, that's so cool. It made me think of something though. I feel like because I'm like you and you're like me, in the way that, we think about, the on and off switch and also I'm very much like you where if I start finding something that I'm curious about, I dig into rabbit holes. And then the reason why I do that too is because it's just pure routine. Like that's just my habit. So they say that we have like 60,000 thoughts a day and about 10% of those thoughts are actually new. Do you struggle with change? Like, well, I mean, I'm not joking you. Like, I love having this routine of the days that I have and to actually change those days. So like the idea of waking up at 5 a.m., God, no for me, because I'm such a night owl. Do you struggle with that change to a routine and traveling? Or do you like it?
I hate it because it's difficult to change. Is tough for humans because it's the unknown. So when something isn't like it always is, it's kind of like in that space of like, okay, what's going to happen now? And we like things to be predictable, right? Humans love predictability. This is why chain restaurants do so much better than individual restaurants, because if I go to a Starbucks, I know what I'm going to get every single time. We like predictability, but with that comes less creativity. With predictability comes, predictability with thoughts and concepts. And I find I get my best ideas when I mix things up sometimes. So, I didn't always wake up at 5 a.m. to work out. I've only been doing that for the last maybe year and a half. Before that, it was, in the afternoon when I would work out. So I think it's important to change your routine, as uncomfortable as it is, just to mix things up and to stir up a little bit of creativity. When I used to manage gyms, I would have these large sales staffs. These were big gyms, right? Like 30, 40,000 square foot facilities. So I'd have a sales staff of, anywhere between 6 to 10 salespeople, and then I have personal trainers and all that stuff. But with salespeople, in order to be effective at selling, you have to have some little bit of motivation and passion behind what you're doing. And if you do the same thing every day, it can be hard to maintain that. So sometimes what I would do, and this was a very effective thing, and it sounds stupid, but it would work every single time, is I would just change everybody's seating arrangement just randomly. They'd come into work and they'd be like, "Where's my stuff?" And I'd be like, "You're sitting over there now." And it used to piss them off at first, but that motion would create, new energy and a little bit of new passion, motivation. And it would always translate into better sales. And as funny as that was, I tested that theory so many times, and every single time it worked. So I think it's important to do that, a little bit to, I don't know, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, I guess. That can turn into a habit too, but just embrace a little bit of that change, because that's where, when you're in a different environment, that's when you're going to start thinking a little bit differently. That's literally, I think that's the definition of creativity, isn't it? Thinking differently. I know when I was a kid, sometimes I would sleep like upside down in my bed, like I'd flip around, and just so I could see my room from a different angle. And it's so weird, right? I would do that, and because I'm looking at my room from the other direction, it would look all weird. And then I'd have all these cool thoughts because everything was all of a sudden was different. So, I've learned to try to embrace that a little bit. But yeah, if I told you I loved it every single time, I'd be lying. I mean, who likes the unknown? You know what I mean? I like knowing, I'm going to wake up at this time. This is what I'm going to have. I'm going to do my workout at this time. We're going to do this at work, rather than what's going to happen tomorrow. Who knows? That could be a little nerve wracking, especially for type A type individuals.
Yeah. Wow. I thank you for bringing that up. I think it's so important to know that, there is a great thing that can happen out of change, and that is creativity. And there's also a greater thing that can happen out of change is just, being able to flex that muscle. Is like, okay, if things are just different, and that now going into it, like things are just going to be different, because of this new environment change. Like I often say, like, yeah, we're creatures of habit, sure, but we're even more so creatures of our environment. And that's truly what's going to change us. You change your environment, and different, like I love to write. And when I write for hours straight, I feel good about it. But then when I can't write something well, I feel like a loser. I suck. I feel like I'm the worst person in the world, especially when I am devoting this hour to really write. And I just go, dude, you gotta use these rules that you preach to people all the time. Like, take and just change your environment. Go for a freaking walk. Get outside, just go play. And so when I go into how does Sal have fun? Like, how are you taking joy and putting it in your life?
Among all things, I really enjoy doing certain things with my kids. Like I love having good conversations with them. I enjoy board games with my kids because it allows that space for us to have conversations. So that's always really fun. I really enjoy exploring different environments with my girlfriend. She's much more courageous on that standpoint, where she'll go on a camping trip and not really have any plans and just know the kind of the direction she's going to go. And then she'll drive off and camp. And that to me is terrifying. Like I'm not somebody that can do that or at least I used to not be that kind of a person. She very much was. So we started dating, and, you know, of course, if you start dating a girl that you really like, you'll do some shit that'll make you uncomfortable because you really like this girl, right? So she talked me into doing a few of these things, and we went on a couple trips and where we didn't necessarily have plans. Like we didn't have things booked. We just went over to, like, we went to Lake Tahoe, and we knew we were going to camp, but we didn't know where. And we kind of, you know, played it by ear, which was very anxiety inducing for me. But I went with it, and I found it to be extremely enjoyable, especially afterwards. I mean, while we're doing it, it's kind of stressful. After we're done, I'm like, wow, I'm really happy I did that. She calls that type 2 fun. I'd never heard that term before, but I guess type 2 fun is where you enjoy it after you do it. You know what I mean? Where while you're doing it kind of sucks. It's afterwards, like, I'm so glad I did that very stressful thing. So yeah, there's that.
I love it.
I like altered states of consciousness. So I like if I'm going to go on a hike, I'll have like an edible or something like that with a relatively high, for me, amount of THC. I'm pretty low doser, so I don't need much. But then I'll go on a hike, and because of the change in environment and the change of my mental state, I'll have some of the best ideas and thoughts in those situations. And I'll do this hike, and then I'll stop, and then I'll just talk about these ideas or write them down. I prefer talking. That's how I think. I think best when I'm talking. So if I talk to somebody else, then I can come up with some of my best ideas. So that's kind of fun. I like watching movies. Movies that can change my moods, especially movies that radically change my moods. So things that will make me, that will feel very impactful or emotional or scary, I really enjoy, because I get a thrill out of, you know, walking in feeling one way and then, you know, walking out feeling a totally different way. I really appreciate that, even if it's a bad feeling, something I appreciate. But I guess, I mean, nothing too crazy, I guess. It's just things that I find that spark creativity in me, I tend to gravitate towards. And that usually involves just changing my environment.
Yeah, I talk about, the only reason why I want to bring up joy is just because, on the surface level, like sometimes getting into these, like, oh, I'm just going to dig myself into a rabbit hole of research. Like on the outside, people might look at that as like, oh, that doesn't look very fun, like at all. Why would you want to read more and more research about, you know, XYZ? And I've got to ask you though, like, just cause I'm super curious, like, what are your go-to sources when you, want to really find out something about philosophy or, fitness, or what are your 3 favorite website sources?
So let's see, fitness, T-Nation's got some pretty good articles, so I like them. I belong to like a lot of groups on Facebook, so they're not necessarily specific sources, but an individual on a group will post an article, and then that article will motivate me, or at least inspire me to read about, you know, more and more. So I like to read, you know, PubMed, you know, articles on studies. I really enjoy, you know, you talk about joy. You know what I really love more than anything? Almost more than anything is I love it when I when I discover something that is completely opposite to what I thought. Like, I love it when I read something and I'm like, holy shit, I was so wrong. Like, this just blew my mind. And I could feel that internal shift where I'm all of a sudden this different person. It's happened a few times in my life. And there's a few people that have done it to me. There's, you know, Carl Sagan. You know, he's you probably don't know who that is because you're young, but Carl Sagan was
No, I know. Carl.
No, well,
he's the man. He's got a podcast,
so I think,
dude.
You might be talking about a different one. So Carl Sagan.
No, I'm thinking Neil deGrasse talks about Carl Sagan all the time. That's
this physicist who communicated physics in a way that was just compelling. And so the reason why he was so impactful to me is he got me interested in, you know, physics, which brought me down this rabbit hole of quantum physics, which is just fucking wacky, weird shit. And that was, there was a period of my life where I was just reading books on that. I thought that was fascinating. And then there's Milton Friedman, who's the economist who I caught some of his videos on YouTube. The first video of his I watched was the pencil, where he talks about all the people that have to come together and work together to create this pencil that we get for so cheap. And none of these people know each other, but they all work together through this market system that is what really contributes to, like, if you want to get a bunch of people working together, you allow markets to be open so that people can work together and to serve their own best interest, but without realizing it, they're all cooperating. That blew my mind and got me down a path of learning about economics and how that affects world peace and all that stuff. And then more recently, Jordan Peterson, another gentleman who I watched his lecture on YouTube. He was in the UK and he was lecturing on a book that he wrote called 12 Rules to Life. And he was so pragmatic, and he was communicating things that weren't necessarily groundbreaking, although a couple of things he said were. But just the way he communicated them, I understood them differently than I had before. And it was brilliant. And I've since been consuming a lot of his information, and that's brought me to some new directions. Now I'm reading Carl Jung. I'm reading, Nietzsche. I'm reading, Freud. Like, these are all philosophers and psychologists who just, brilliant individuals that, if I wasn't introduced to Jordan Peterson, I wouldn't even paid attention to them. But I love reading, their information, because I'll read something and I'll be like, whoa, like that's so opposite of what I thought. And then I'll sit and ponder on that thought for a few days. And if it really resonates with me, it just changes everything. And that, I don't know if that's joy as much as it's just exhilarating, I guess. I love that. Absolutely. I live for it.
That's awesome. That's so cool. So I wish I could talk to you for the next 14 hours, honestly. But I know that you're a busy guy, and I know Mind Pump crew's up to big things, and I just want to enter what I call scratching the surface curiosity questions. And the mission of it is just to learn a little bit more about you and also make someone feel less alone. So whenever you're ready. Awesome. So first question I'd like to ask is, what is, it's a giving question, which is, what's a thought that you're ashamed about having recently that you keep on having that you wish you didn't?
Ashamed of having that I wish I didn't have. God, that's a good question, man. I'm going to have to think here for a second. Let me think. Well, here's a thought that I have sometimes that I tend to battle with. I was at the store, and I was grocery shopping. I was at Whole Foods, and I walk out, and there's this mother with her kids, and they have a sign. They're homeless, and the kids are, sitting on the curb looking, they're sad or whatever, and the mom's holding the sign. And I had the thought of like, oh, you're using your kids just to get people to give you money. And after I left, I felt really ashamed of thinking that, because I didn't know that person's situation, and my instinct was to assume that it was negative, that was something bad. I felt really bad about thinking about that. I'm glad you asked that question, because I get to get this off my chest.
Are you someone who's trying to build your online presence, and you're finding out that it takes some time, a lot of time, and someone might recommend, hey, you should write a book and become an expert in that area so you're known for that one thing? Well, a book, as I've gone through it and come to find, takes a long time. It takes about another 1.5 years. But that doesn't mean that you can't become known for your thing. I think the best way to do this is through starting a podcast and getting a website out there that can archive all the work and the content and the area of expertise that you want to be known for. Because you want to be the go-to guy when someone thinks of, hey, I want to get in really good shape, but heck, I don't know what it's going to take. And you know that your area of supremacy, as I dub it, is to get someone into really great shape. And what if you could bring on other influencers that already have a name for themselves online onto your own podcast to create content to rank in really well, to be the go-to guy when it comes to being the enthusiast that you wish you were online, to be the influencer that you wish you were online, to be known as the expert. If you look at what's been happening in the world, it's all going towards online. So if you're still running a business and overhead's high, please reach out. Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. And this is a service where it's a done-for-you podcast. We'll get you systematically hooked up to where you have a website, your podcast, and it really gets you on the roll to where your job is just to come in and have the fun part, which is interviewing the experts that you wish you could align yourself with more, and to start actually making some noise and disrupt this whole idea that it takes another year to get really known for your area of expertise. So if this at all interests you, just email me, Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. Again, that's Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. I think you're not alone in that, though. Like, judging someone for doing something that's supposedly good, but in your head it doesn't look
you just
like
feel,
it's charity at all.
You know what it is?
Do you know what I mean?
I thought about it for a while, actually, is because it bothered me. It bothered me a lot. First, it bothered me because I thought what I thought. And then it bothered me because I felt bad for what I thought. And then I realized, I know why sometimes it bothers us when we see that. And it's not because it bothers us to see somebody that's asking for money. It bothers us because it puts us in a position to say no to them. And we don't want to be that guy that says no, because now we're not the person that's giving or helping. And we have so much that we can give and so much that we can offer. And, it like it's like puts a mirror in front of our face. Now, I'm not making the case that you should help every single person you see. Not at all. I'm just observing that. I think it bothers us because it reminds us that, we're not as virtuous as we think we are, which is okay, but we have to be okay with that rather than playing the whole, I'm such a good person, I want to help all these people. Meanwhile, I have 12 pairs of shoes, 2 TVs in my house. I throw more food away than a lot of people eat, in the world or whatever. So it's a mirror, and it's, we have to be okay with it and acknowledge it and realize that we're not as good as we think we are.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. Just wanted to ask you if you could share this episode, please. It's the best compliment you could ever pay. Whenever I hear something that makes me laugh, makes me feel like, heck, I'm not alone in this world. Or maybe it makes me feel like, gosh, I really feel wiser after listening to this episode. Well, I think the best compliment that you could pay to that person that created that for you is by sharing that with the world on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, or any social network that you currently have, because it just does not take any money or even that much effort to share it out, just to click that share button. Because really, the more you share, the more awesome things people will come and give you too. I promise this. This is kind of like, I guess, the sort of code of the world. By sharing, people start to really recognize what you care about. And that's pretty cool. So please just take a few seconds to share this when you're done listening to it. I really appreciate it. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough. It's very reflective insight on you, my friend. Wow. Yeah, I love how you just broke that down. The next curiosity question I got for you, though, is what is some talent that you wish you had, but you keep trying at this talent and it's just not coming to fruition?
God, what would I wish I had that I keep, I don't keep trying, but I really wish I could dance good. I've always been, I feel like when you're a really good dancer, like you can go to a party and even though you might feel awkward or whatever and you can't, like, oh, who am I going to talk to? Well, you can just start dancing and be cool right away, right? So luckily I can talk. So I can rely on that a little bit, but yeah, I can't dance for shit. I look like an idiot out there on the dance floor. In fact, but I don't even try anymore. So you said, what do I keep trying? I know it's kind of not fair because I'm not answering your question directly, but dancing. I wish I could dance.
Hey, I love it. It kind of just made me learn a lot about myself just saying that. Reason why I don't like parties is because I like talking and having deep conversations. And when there's dancing involved, I like to dance alone, but not with other people. But the next question I got for you is, what is like one of the worst advices you've ever given to one of your clients? And now that you think about it, 10 years later, you kind of wish you could take that advice back and go, why
that's
did
easy.
I give
Early
that
on in my
advice?
career,
No,
I believe calories in versus calories out, paradigm. And I thought that was everything. So if somebody wasn't losing weight, I just said, well, you're just eating too much. Keep reducing your calories until you start losing weight. And although that's true sometimes it's not. And sometimes you may be causing people damage if they continue to eat less and less, especially if they have something like metabolic damage, slow metabolism or whatever. You may be asking somebody to eat less than 1,000 calories just to lose weight, and then their body will adapt to that. And then you're setting them up for some serious weight gain or reversal of results in the near future.
Oh, I love that. And then, hey, man, what would you title your autobiography?
Oh, God. I think I'm cool, so read my book. I don't know. I have no idea. It's like I feel like it's such a narcissistic thing to answer that question with something cool. You know what I mean? I was like, I want to say something that's not cool so you don't think I'm a narcissist, but at the same time, I want to make it cool because it's my book, right? I have no idea, I wouldn't know what to answer. I had no idea what I would want to do that. I don't think I could write a book about myself. I don't feel like I've done enough for it to be interesting, or at least I'll question, who I think I am. I think I'm awesome enough to write a book even. That'd be a difficult one. I guess I would just say, I don't know. Man, that's a good question. I can't answer that.
Take out the autobiography portion. What would you name a book?
I've been thinking about writing a book for a while. And I'm not quite sure what to name it. I've thrown around some names like the MAPS method or, something along those lines, really about discovering the roots of what motivates us to be healthy, fit, and live a fruitful life, through wellness. And, but I'm not quite sure what I'd name it. The MAPS method just keeps coming to me just because MAPS was the first program that I created, but I'm not sure if that'd be the name that I would stick with.
Well, I'm going to try to hold you accountable by bringing it up every now and then, just on Facebook, forum, because I'm a part of that, and that's how I know I can get a hold of you. But if that's something that is not in the future of Mind Pump, because I think that the way you guys are pouring out content is incredible. But hey, the last question I want to ask is just how can we support you? Anybody that's listening to this right now, how can I support you? I want to share everything that you have to offer, and
excellent. Well, what you're doing right now is
you're passionate about. Let me know.
I think for your listeners, just listen to my show Mind Pump, and if you like what we have to say, you can get some of our programs. We wrote them with integrity. They're effective. They work. We designed them as personal trainers with years and years, and I have 2 decades of experience. So just listen to our show, check it out, and take it from there.
I love it. If you heard anything today that Sal or myself talked about, Instagram, Facebook, tweet about it, tag one of us, because I really made this show not to just be like another guest that you hear because, you want to just fill your brain up with something and you're bored, and so you fill it up and then you hit the next button onto the next podcast or the next audiobook or YouTube video or whatever. But really take the time to just shout out at one of us, because I want every single guest to come on here to become not just a hero of yours or a mentor, but to actually reach out and say hey to them. And Sal, I really appreciate you coming on the show. You guys at Mind Pump are, honestly, when you said yes to this interview, I'm not joking you, man, I've been like having anxiety attacks about hoping that it goes well, and just hoping that I do a decent job. But I'm looking forward to continuing to be a Mind Pump fan, and you guys don't make just like fans, you guys make true fans, and you guys don't just make customers, but you guys honestly make like amazing friends and people that will go above and beyond, and you keep changing lives over and over and over. So you, Adam, Justin, Doug, and the rest of the team, keep doing what you're doing. I love it, and I will continue to consume it and put it into practice as soon as possible, because I know that that's what it takes.
All right, brother.
All right, there's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to support the show by listening. The biggest compliment you could ever pay me is just by sharing this, because honestly, it doesn't take much, and it feels so good when people create something and take time. And when I see someone take time to create something that really just changed my day, either made me feel less alone, maybe put a smile on my face, made me laugh, made me feel wiser, I always want to share it with the world. Because why? When I share something that resonates with me, why not share it? I mean, that's just kind of the thing that goes around, and it's free. It takes no time at all other than just a click of the button, share, on either Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Any of those social media platforms would be great to share this. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say that anybody who's looking to gain authority or expertise in their area, and they don't want to take another year or year and a half to write a book and wait until that's published, I think the best way is right now is to start a podcast. So if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, if you meet the certain requirements, I would love to help you with a podcast and also get a website going for you as well. And this is not an easy task. It's hard to actually get it done and get it out there. So every now and then we need some help, and I'm here for you. So please reach me at Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com if you're interested at all. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.